Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Hurling Show, here live on Off the Ball. We're on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, any way you like it. I'm Shane Stapleton. With me in studio this week I have a couple of the greatest biffos you'll ever meet. Will O'Callaghan and Michael Verney. How are you two?
Hi Shane, you well?
Very good. Not too bad. It's Valentine's Day, you know, and I couldn't help but think, as a young lad growing up, who were the hurlers that you had an old man crush on? They were just a great little hurler, and the guy that came to mind for me was a guy from my own parish, Bursley, great club man, wing forward, dashing sort of a player, played midfield as well, Aidan Ryan. Do you remember him? Absolutely brilliant player.
I vaguely remember him, yeah.
You vaguely remember
vaguely
him?
Remember him, yeah.
We've a few years in us, you see.
Yeah, well, like, if we can bring up that first image of him, you can see that shock of blonde hair. He looks like Boris Johnson. Well, he's got Boris Johnson hair on him there. Look at that.
It's uncanny,
absolutely sensational head of hair. Now, to be honest, the hair has sort of faded a little bit over time, but absolutely brilliant player for for Bursley over the years. Look at that. That is
full
him.
flow.
That is full flow with him. The hair flying backwards. And Philip Maher, who's an all. Actually, look, first that image against Down in 1997, All Ireland quarter-final played in Clonus of all places, would you believe? But I spoke with Philip Maher, another Bursley man, about Aidan Ryan, and he said that he looked like he was always going fast. I think it was the way his hair was. He had that hair like Tony Brown. The hair was moving. It was nearly going faster than him. He blocked down 2 lads in the 91 final and stayed going and nearly burst the net, and the crowd came onto the field. Do you remember that famous image from the 1991 replay? The crowd all burst onto the field. Incredible stuff. That was my man crush.
To be fair now, Will, probably the reason we don't have as much of an appreciation for Aidan Ryan is, like, once we just didn't look outside of the border that side, like.
No.
You never even ventured in there.
No, it was a quiet period for Tipperary as well around the time that we were growing up. We were
Whereas
too busy
now you're in love
with
with Kilkenny because you're so useless yourself. Tell me I'm wrong.
Man crushes though, yeah, like, it's from me growing up personally, it was an obscure one. Like, everyone loves the flair player, you know, the person that gets all the scores and takes all the headlines. But my kind of man crush was the opposite. It was Offaly legend Martin Hannamy.
Right,
yeah, like, teak tough. Look at him there, look, what a man. Full of, like, if you're talking about style and substance, he had a bit of style, but by J's did he have substance. He was a great bit of stuff.
So that was your Valentine?
That was my Valentine. Like, he was unbelievably good throughout his Offaly career. I don't think he ever heard one bad game, and that was actually his last game against Cork in '99. He was just Mr. Consistency the whole way through. And I love as well, Jesus, he was never afraid to pull a stroke.
No, I'm actually surprised the photo they went for there wasn't the one of him picking up the Liam McCarthy where he like a massive cut over his eye.
That's true, yeah.
The wars against Limerick that afternoon.
There's a great clip from the '98 All Ireland actually. Well, it's great, so you can depend on who's looking at it. PJ Delaney had actually sidestepped him, and he just grabs his face guard, and it's like literally like whiplash. Now you'd probably get red card in about 6 months, I'd say, and maybe a jail sentence.
Will, your man crush Valentine?
Yeah, I went outside of our club as well. Like, Brian Whelan was kind of a suggestion, but I went for Johnny Dooley.
Really?
Yeah, I think again it's kind of seminal moments when you're growing up.
Look at the tongue out in that photo.
That's Will's
Valentine.
Fantastic stick man. If he was a man crush of Henry Shefflin's as well. If he's good enough for Shefflin, he's good enough for me. And '94 All Ireland final, just Johnny Dooley, how key he was in the comeback for Offaly against Limerick when I was, I think, 5 or 6 years of age at the All Ireland final. Moments like that you just don't forget.
And Billy Dooley hardly moved an inch and he was throwing the ball over the bar.
3 of the best, hands over the head and the tongue out as well. Yeah.
An interesting thing then about Johnny Dooley, Sheer Kieran man, played club championship against his son Shane Dooley playing for Tullamore.
No, that'd be his nephew.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Sorry,
mixing him up.
But what a family, yeah. I think it was 211 out of 316 after they got 94 All Ireland, but
You're right, yeah. And Shane would have been, I think he was a mascot for Clarine in the '96 final.
Regularly remind him of it, yes.
Yeah, and then went on to play obviously and win one with Tullamore in 2009.
How do you feel about the music, lads? It's pretty sexy stuff.
Yeah, it's bringing the tone up here.
It's erotic, actually, yeah.
I think we can kill the music at this point. Actually, speaking of Offaly, as I said, you're two massive biffos. Offaly are going to be playing against Laois in what amounts to a relegation scrap this weekend in Division 1B. How do you think, like, Eddie Brennan had such a tough start, never mind the fact that he's still playing with Greg Ballycallan in the Leinster Intermediate Championship, got to an All-Ireland semi-final at the age of 40. Losing his best player, which is Ross King, fantastic free taker, brilliant player, underage player with Arsenal, I believe, just fantastic athlete. And then for that fracas in the county final whereby he gets the butt of the hurley through the face guard, he opts off the panel, and you've other players opting off the panel as well. Eddie Brennan couldn't have possibly had a worse set of circumstances coming in to do that job.
Yeah, and probably question marks over whether Ross King will actually hurl for Laois again. He was captain for the last couple of years, and it seemed that Eamon Kelly had found a position that was right for Ross King on the team as well. Roddy, probably as he's more better known around home, had always kind of been a tricky corner forward initially, then it kind of maybe come out, played a few games in the half forwards, and then I think the way he described himself was he was like a spring bullock led out into a field when he went out to midfield. But he did a couple of big campaigns. He was a big player for Laois. The first year of Eamon Kelly, he was, I think, their best player by quite a distance. The team underperformed quite a bit last year. They should have really got to the Joe McDonagh Cup given the talent that they have in the team. And then, as you said, quite aside from the unsavoury instance in that final between Rathdowney Earl and Camross.
Not to mention the Snapchats going around, the screenshots going around of people goading him over losing his teeth as well. I mean, that's a terrible set of circumstances, not only for the individual, but then Eddie Brennan is showing up and he's got this on his plate.
Yeah, it's obviously not ideal circumstances to come into, and like Dwayne Palmer was one of the hurlers who's now subsequently left the Laois panel since. There was one of the Camross players that was pictured on Snapchat as well. These weren't taken by any of the current Laois hurlers from Camross who were in on the panel, but were taken by club mates of theirs when they were in the pub. Captions were obviously stuck up. It annoyed a lot of people, particularly I think in Rathdowney Earl, and then the bans that were handed out were subsequently appealed and were cut back down as well, and as a result I think that probably irked quite a few people. There was even talk about having clubs coming together and actually having group meetings to try and talk about some of the violence that's happened in Laois in recent years. It's not entirely the reason why people have opted off the panel. There's been a lack of buy-in going back for quite some time with Laois hurling panels, and this isn't something that's new for Eddie Brennan to come in and actually for him to inherit as well. But Laois, I think over the last 4 or 5 years, at no point really, maybe 1 year under Cheddar when there was a lot of buy-in, the year they beat Offaly in the Leinster Championship.
Nearly beat Galway 1 year. They had a 21-yard free. Was it Enda Rowland had a 21-yard free that would have stolen the game against Galway.
But nearly every year the focus seems to be on who's not there. Zane Keenan particularly was one of the best hurlers in the county, has missed many of his best years where he probably could have been hurling for Laois as well. It does harm their chances.
Yeah, I have to say I do think it was a bit naive of Eddie, to think that everyone would come in. I have just a bit of an issue. In Kilkenny, obviously everybody goes in. Everybody wants to be there. If you're called, you go in, and very few lads would drop off. In weaker counties, it's not like that. It's not the same scenario, and I was surprised that he came out kind of bemoaning the fact that he couldn't get his best players. That's just a fact in weaker counties. The same in Offaly at the moment. You do not always have the best raw materials available to you, and you just have to kind of plough on. There's little you can do about that, and it's a bit kind of blinkered maybe to think that you would have everybody.
They've put up half-decent scorelines in their couple of league games. So they were beaten 422 to 115 against Waterford. It's a heavy enough beating, 16 points. Lost 127 to 215 against Galway, away from home as well. Fairly creditable. So is he doing okay because nobody expects him to necessarily beat either of those teams?
Yeah, I think he's doing, based on the results anyway, and the scores, as I said, they're conceding a lot, but the scores they're putting up, if you compare them to Offaly, Offaly scored 19 points in 2 games. Yeah. They've scored 215 and, what you say, 1 something in the first game?
115.
Yeah, that's good. That's a decent kind of return, in fairness. And nobody's expecting, miracles or anything either.
And crucially, they were well behind in that game against Galway and didn't die, ultimately. And if it comes down to scoring difference in the end, it's unlikely now, though, given Carlo's draw, that it is going to come down to scoring difference. But there is that possibility that Laois keeping the score down against Galway could be important in the end.
As an Offaly man, how much do you hate losing to your neighbours Laois?
Probably a bit more in the last few years, I would think.
Because you've had the whip hand over them traditionally.
Yeah, that game with Cheddar, that one, they beat us in Portlaoise 29-21.
First time since the 70s they won a championship.
I remember interviewing Niall Rigney afterwards, and he was hopping and trotting over lads. That must have stung. Would this one sting now?
Personally, it wouldn't sting. But it always stings. But it wouldn't sting as much for me because it probably wasn't expected back then a couple of years ago. But it's probably a bit more expected now. They beat us in O'Moore Park, I think, 2 years ago in the league. In Eamon Kelly's probably his first league game in charge, I think, nearly.
They've traded results in the league over the last few years.
And that's kind of a sign of where we are. It used to be a bit of an aberration if Westmeath beat Offaly or Laois beat Offaly, but it's becoming a far more kind of common occurrence now. It's a massive game, and just as we were kind of talking off air, Offaly have a lot of kind of big names to come back, and some of them might come back this weekend. But it's like a horse having his first run of the season when he maybe hasn't that much done at home. They're coming in. And it's grand to have them in, but they're not sharp,
So who's coming back in the coming weeks now?
Conor Matton is likely to come back.
Conor Matton's likely to hurl this weekend. I think Colin Egan is close to full fitness again. Ben Keneally's a couple of weeks away yet. Who'd be a key player. I think he's Offaly's best young player. Shane Dooley and Joe Bergen are coming back in as well. But again, sharpness.
Yeah.
They're going to be nowhere near where they really need to be for such a big game. And the thing is, if you're going to judge Laois, you're going to judge Offaly. Obviously, the fixtures, the way they've fallen, it's very difficult to know about Laois because they've played, obviously, Waterford and Galway to start. Similarly, Offaly have played Dublin and they've played against Waterford. These are games they wouldn't be expected to win. And now there's a crucial kind of 2-3 game series coming in for both teams.
Yeah, Offaly's in a bit of a mess in a sense too. I think the strength and condition coach they parted ways, shall we say, in recent weeks as well.
Just before the Dublin game,
which isn't a good sign either. Like, I'm not happy with fitness levels. You know, it's not a good vibe to be sending out.
It's not, and Offaly are currently bottom of the division with -40 scoring difference. Everyone's had a week off, so this weekend we've obviously got Laois against Offaly. We've also got Cork against Clare. That's been moved to Páirc Uí Rinn because Páirc Uí Chaoimh is
on play.
The pitch is in such a state. Waterford, Carlow. You're also looking at Kilkenny, Limerick, Wexford, Tipperary, and Galway, Dublin. I definitely wanted to focus on Galway, Dublin this weekend because it's Mattie Kenny going back to Galway. Now, himself and Micheál Donoghue both went for the job together a couple of years ago, and I spoke with someone who was on the interview committee at the time, and they said both of them did really, really impressive presentations, but Donoghue just about sneaked through. Mattie Kenny will certainly want to go and prove a point. Obviously, I played under him for 5 years with Coola, and I know he will see this as a challenge to go back and beat his home county. You know, I mean, you have to remove the emotion here. You want to go back and beat your home county, don't you?
A challenge is one thing. They have a great chance of getting promotion if they win as well. Like, so there's a couple of carrots dangling in front of him, yeah. And like, you're not going to say it outwardly, but yeah, he would have been hurt that he didn't get the Galway job. He would probably be a bit hurt that he had to go somewhere else to go into inter-county management, and I'm sure he's not going to broadcast it or tell us or anything like that, but I'm sure he'd love to get one over them. Yeah, definitely. And by all accounts, like when he was in with Anthony Cunningham, he was very well regarded as the coaching work he did under him. It's unfortunate maybe for him that he had to go somewhere else to get into inter-county management, but who knows, that could lead to very exciting things for Dublin as well.
They've had some challenges as well. We've got a video of Eamon Trollier Dillon, the night before one of the matches recently. So he just had, we don't have the video, but anyway, he just had his second child.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Five in the morning. He puts up a video of basically him being woken up by the baby, and then he goes out and I think he scores a goal that evening anyway, so no big deal.
Him staying fit is massive. I think he's a really good forward for them. He just has troubles. He's had troubles the last couple of years.
He had something very similar to what, do you remember when John O'Shea got a dead leg against I think it was France in that Henri handball game?
Yeah.
He was out for about 6 months, so it was a dead leg, and it ended up calcifying, and that kept him out for a long time. Now, I don't know if Dylan's was exactly the same, but he essentially had the same sort of thing. It was a dead leg and there was calcification. He's back, so that's huge. Sean Tracy's back, Darragh O'Connell's back, Mark Schutte is back if he can get himself fit. He was struggling with a foot injury there recently. So that is huge for him, because Pat Gilroy did a lot of work last year and got a solid foundation, got the players very fit, and I'm not saying they were unfit, but they looked really fit, working really hard. It's kind of set up for Matty, you know, lucky general coming in at the right time maybe. It is set up for Matty.
Galway at an interesting time as well, because Galway would have been expected to blow their first two opposition away. Like, they won by less than 10 points against Laois. They're held against Carlow the last time around. They've obviously started a little bit sluggishly. Dublin have looked impressive enough. You know, they've registered two, you know, pretty, I won't say facile wins, but like two, obviously, they've got the victories that they were expected to get. And now might well be a good time, unless Galway have a fight back in them after what happened and maybe the criticism they've taken from Carlow. This mightn't be a bad time to play against Galway. They're definitely not hitting top gear yet.
And just what you said about Dublin as well, a lot of the guys you said are in attack. And I think Pat Gilroy did a great job at solidifying defence between Owen O'Donnell, Crummy, Shane Barrett, Sean Moran. I think it's more maybe up the field when push comes to shove against really good teams that they need the likes of Dylan on the field. They need Mark Schutte. And yeah, I'd be reasonably confident of how well Dublin will go this year.
Do they have arguably the best six backs in the country? So as a group, so Owen O'Donnell, Cian O'Callaghan, maybe Paddy Smith, I might be forgetting another corner back there, Shane Barrett, Sean Moran, Chris Crummy. Name a better back six in the country.
It's a fair defence, yeah.
Now coming into this weekend, NUIG are about to go out onto the field against Mary I as we speak. DCU went to extra time against UCC the other night. Dublin actually had 10 players involved that featured at some stage. Now, not all of them played the whole game in extra time, but Chris Crummy, Owen O'Donnell, Paddy Smith, Donald Burke, Rian McBride, Fergal Whiteley were all involved for long spells. And, you know, maybe Sean Loftus and I believe Conor Whelan isn't involved for the next couple of weeks with Galway. Does that give Galway the edge?
Not necessarily, because like Thomas Monaghan will be playing for Mary I as well. Like, Galway have a fair few bodies in.
He was brilliant last week.
Yeah, he's been very good. At least the DCU boys have 5 days between the matches, whereas the NUAG guys and a couple of Mary I guys only have 3, like, so I wouldn't read into that too much, but it's a sign of where Dublin are now and where they're going to be, the amount of lads they have involved at the business end of Fitzgibbon Cups. Like, that was the breeding ground for Limerick last year. I remember there was a Fitzgibbon final between UL and Mary I where they had some stupid amount, like well into double figures of lads involved, and maybe 10 or 12 of them were involved in the panel last year. While it mightn't be front and centre and people mightn't see it going on and it mightn't be unbelievably well broadcast or advertised, like, that is the breeding ground for the future, and that's a real positive sign for Dublin.
One thing that people would have always said to me with Coola is that you know, you've got a lot of players that are inter-county level, so, you know, you can call on Conor Callahan, you can call on Mark Schutte, you can call on, you know, take your pick, David Tracy maybe. Now, does he, like, so it would have been seen that he had the trump cards all the time. Whereas now he's coming in with Dublin. They don't have the best panel in the country. They don't have marquee players all over the field. They have a few, but it's not like they've got, you know, a Seamus Callanan here, a TJ Reid there, Richie Hogan there, and take your pick otherwise of great players. So is this a tougher job than Coola was?
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Limerick hadn't any superstars last year. On paper, like, they're a very good squad and a very good team. I don't think necessarily it's a bad thing that he has a lot of guys at a similar level. That level is very, very high. Yeah. So I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
I think Dublin were all about the collective last year as well. You know, the performances they put in, the really good ones in the Leinster Championship, were really about, you know, nobody having a particularly poor game at any point. I mean, Chris Crumley was probably like the standout player throughout the summer, but like, aside from that, who hurled badly for Dublin last summer?
It's a fair point.
It's the opposite side of the argument, really.
We've a comment in, and it's pretty unforgiving in my direction. It says, fair play to Shane for making the effort for Valentine's and dressing like a waiter in a swanky D4 restaurant. That's from John in Dublin. Well, at least you said it's swanky. Yeah. It's not that bad.
It's a bit of a desperado effort, like the 2 buttons open, showing chest hair, yeah, like, in all fairness.
I stand by it. I stand by it. We have a couple of comments in as well in terms of the man crush Valentine. So, growing up in Offaly, says Colin Coughlin, Brian Wheelahan was God, but nothing could compare to the electricity in a stadium when DJ Carey got on the ball. Fair point, to be fair. Yeah, Nisha Waldron, who I heard with at club level, and he also heard with Derry. I grew up loving DJ Carey and John Troy.
John Troy. I think he was everyone's man crush.
Flick.
There's a fellow up in Antrim, plays, I think he's involved with Antrim 21s. His nickname is Troy, just because he's really skillful. And he's named after John Troy, yeah.
And Nisha then added, was there a better marriage than the marriage of JJ and Tommy? One right-handed, the other left, one at 5, one at 7. Match made in heaven.
That's real. That's nearly flowed off the tongue like something Micheál
Well, he's a teacher. He probably spent all morning doing nothing, composing that. Someone called Paolo goes, Dan Shanahan rattling the back of the net was a beautiful sight. To be fair, it was. Yeah. Joey O'Regan, who I went to school with, Joey the Post, he was known as, because in 2 Gaelic football matches in a row he hit the post, so obviously that was going to stick. Have you fallen back in love with Joe Canning? Now, the preview image that came with the tweet put out by Off the Ball was with Joe Canning, and apparently I'm supposed to dislike Joe Canning for some unknown reason. I don't know why. He goes, the Lar Tommy Jackie affair was a complex love triangle. Pa Burke didn't know where to look or go. He was a reluctant participant in it. So, and here comes the music again. Just a little bit too late from our producer, Shane Adam, but it's appreciated.
They were probably closer than most couples would be tonight in France.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So we spoke about Mattie Kenny going back to play against his home county. It just, with what happened with Declan Rice yesterday declaring for England, it just got me thinking about the GAA and loyalty, and, you know, can it mean as much when you transfer club? Like, I've transferred club, this is my 9th season now playing with Coola, and sometimes now and again, if I talk about players transferring clubs or counties or something like that, or even with the rugby players switching nationality, people would say to me, so look, you swap clubs, it can't mean more, hashtag one life, one club, all that kind of stuff. What's your opinion on that?
Well, Roger Giggs says loyalty is dead, doesn't he?
Yeah, live for rewards.
I think that's a different level of disloyalty.
Yeah, no, like, a lot of it, like, your transfer situation is, like, it's just the scenario that you're left in, like, it's not possible for you to get back, like, or whatever, and then you throw your lot in with a club, and I think there's a difference between you throwing your lot in with the club and training the whole time and being there the whole time and maybe getting involved at committee level, between that and the guy that maybe just coming in, doing a bit here and there, doesn't really buy into it. That's different. Like, most, like, if you're a true, we'll say, a true Gael, shall we say, you'll throw your lot in with a club and you'll get involved in their fundraising and you'll get involved with everything. Like, I personally don't, like, I'm living up in Dublin the last 3 years, I would never consider transferring, but it's possible for me to get back and just work it to get back down for training and stuff like that. But I can see how people do, and I I don't think it takes away your passion or your love for your adopted club. You'll never lose your love for Borrisoleigh, but you have another allegiance now, and I don't think there's any great issue with that at all.
Well, in fairness, it enriches a lot of clubs where guys go into them as well. I mean, quite aside from some clubs who get criticised for maybe chasing inter-county players, you get people who just move to the area for whatever reason. It's not just the city clubs that do this as well. I mean, I remember when St Bridget's from Roscommon won the All-Ireland Club Championship, and they benefited quite a bit from guys who went to work in the army in Athlone, and they were just looking for a club, and they found their way into there, teachers that come into the area as well. And if you're a small rural area with a very small pick, getting a player in of a high standard, and maybe a guy who might have played a bit of inter-county into your club, could be the difference between winning the championship or not. So I think sometimes we focus on the idea of these mercenary players who go around looking for another club. It can work the other way around.
Just on that, I think the guy's name was Jimmy Barrett. He was manager of the Castleblaney team that ran Dunnamaggin really, really close last week. But he's originally from Ballyragget. He went up to Castleblaney, played there for years, and everyone in Castleblaney that references hurling references this guy, because he basically just overhauled the whole club, and that's the benefit that fresh blood and new lads can have to a club. Like, so we'd love to get a few more boys at home. Like, if there's more lads coming in, like, it's kind of down the country. There's a less and less transfers. It's usually leaning towards guys going to the Castle.
Well, the whole country has been sucked up towards Dublin as well. Like, even look, Conor Cox, he's gone from Kerry, he's moved up to Roscommon. I just look at Niall Deasy. He briefly went up and joined Plunkett's.
That's a bit of a mad loophole scenario.
He's up in Dublin, and then he ends up doing so well, but Ballier gets called into the panel, and I believe he's just back home at Ballier now as well. Conor Kenny, he was brilliant underage player for Kildare, but his dad would have hurled and won an All-Ireland, Club All-Ireland with Borrisoleigh, so he's down there. And then even the Arthur brothers from Clare.
That's right,
if you remember them winning the Munster under 21, I think.
One of Ger Arthur played for Flannans, beat us in an All-Ireland colleges semi-final.
Ger and Niall, they joined the Fianna, and then they're up playing for Louth now at the moment as well. So I think it can be very easy to have a pop at lads, and I'm sure I'm going to get slagged now from people I know for bringing this subject up and defending myself on it. But if you go to college, you could become really close with those guys and end up having them as your best man and that kind of thing. So why couldn't you go to another club and it mean a lot because you've soldiered along with these guys for 6 or 7 years? Why could that not mean a huge lot to you as well, and someone throw the one life, one club thing at you?
I get that the whole time as well, because we've 3 clubs in our parish at home, and I went to primary school in Crinkle, which is a junior club, like literally
still in the parish.
Yeah, 700 or 800 metres from my house, so that's where we went to primary school. So I ended up, like, probably through, my mother always blames herself for letting me go up and hurl up there, so I went hurling up there, and I kind of just thought when I was 13 or 14 that I'd be able to transfer down to Burren. It'd be no great issue, but it was a great issue. There was an awful lot of hardship involved, so I actually ended up moving into the town when I was 17 and living there in a flat for like a year and a half to get a transfer, and I was there like the whole time. The light was always on, I was always in there.
How tough was that?
I think it was been checked as well, whether you were or not.
Funny enough, like, people often say that was a tough, like, jeez, on a Friday or Saturday night it was great. People landing back to the house and that, it was great like that. And I suppose it probably teaches you about independence and stuff like that, but it is a mad scenario to have to go through.
Did it make it mean more afterwards when...
Oh, 100%, yeah, 100%, yeah. And lads would often reference that. They'd say, like, what does hurling mean, or what does the club mean? And I remember Aaron Wheelan, actually, Brian's son, saying, he's like, what does the club mean? He said, you transferred into Burr to hurl with us. Like, that's, you don't need to ask me what anything means. That shows me what hurling means to me and what it should mean to you and everyone else. Like, yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on from that. We've been talking about Brian Cody a lot. He tends to come up over and over and over again, and it just, you start to wonder, how long can he go on? It's his 21st season.
How long is a piece of string?
Fairly long, by all accounts.
I think as long as his health is okay, I think Brian will keep going.
Well, that's the interesting thing. He had now it was a pre-planned heart operation in 2013. He missed a couple of games, and you know, like, it sets alarm bells ringing anytime you hear anything to do with the heart. But it could have been such a, you know, routine procedure. We don't know, and maybe he's absolutely flying it. I mean, he seems to be anyway, and he seems to have a great appetite for it. But do you see him being Kilkenny boss in 10 years' time?
10 years, whoa. 10 years is a lot. 10 years is a lot, because we'll just say if the golden generation and Henry's great team and a few other guys start, like Henry's already cut his teeth, if they start having a lot of success in the next 4 or 5 years, I think he'll go when he feels that the position is ready to be filled by someone who will do justice to the job, that's when I think he'll go. It was gas. I was down in Kilkenny last Friday. They had a Glanbia launch, a sponsorship extension, and like all the Kilkenny GAA officials just refer to Cody as the boss.
Yeah.
Like, he is, like, officials will come and go every 5 or 10 years or whatever, but he has just, like, outlasted everybody, like, and it's almost like he kind of oversees almost everything even within the county. Like, it's gas. Like, I think he could stay going for as long as you like, and I wouldn't have said that a couple of years ago, because I thought they would need a fresh voice to deal with how hurling has changed and how maybe dealing with people has changed maybe a bit as well. But he's obviously adapted his approach, because he has an unbelievable buy-in from the next generation of Kilkenny hurlers now, and he's playing a different style as well that he never played before. So he's clearly the old continuous professional development. He's clearly learning on the job and always upskilling his skills.
Turned 65 in July. He's actually only a month older than JBM. Who of course looks incredibly young for his age as well. Some of the longest serving managers in the GAA, Mick O'Dwyer was 77 when he stopped managing Clare in 2013. Mickey Hart 67, Justin McCarthy was 65 when he was finished up at Limerick in 2010. Cody obviously 64 at the moment. Brian McAniff was 63, Babs Keaton the same, Mickey Moran 61, and then Alex Ferguson was 71 when he finished up at Man United after 27 seasons. The thing about Cody is I was looking at his record as player and manager in terms of what he's won. So he's won as a manager 11 All-Irelands, 15 Leinsters, 9 leagues. As a player, 3 All-Irelands, 4 Leinsters, 2 leagues. So he has 42 titles as player and manager. So he's actually been involved in 33.6% of all of Kilkenny's title wins. They've won 125 overall, 36 All-Irelands, 71 Leinsters and 18 leagues. It's outrageous.
Savage, isn't it, in fairness, yeah.
I
didn't think he would, but I get the distinct impression that he could end up going out on the top now.
Do you think so?
I think they'll get an All-Ireland in the next couple of years, yeah, and that could be maybe next 3 or 4 years, and that could be when he parts.
It's always, like, it's impossible to pick when to leave. And I mean, Ronan O'Gara was here in this very studio last week, and he was saying, look, the fairy tale will be, but no one ever really knows when you're at the absolute height of your power, you'd love to leave. Like, if he gets this Kilkenny team, who a couple of years ago were almost entirely written off, and they were saying, look, a new voice is absolutely needed. If he gets them back to All-Ireland contention level again, and if you think about it, last year, they were, 2 points away from Limerick in an All-Ireland quarter-final, which they could have won. They obviously won the league when they weren't expected to do so last year as well. The big question is, are Kilkenny really that far behind the pack at the moment? And I don't think they really are that far behind once they get their full team back. And
just quickly, just to talk about the man who stopped the drive for 5 before, Liam Sheedy. I wonder what is he telling Seamus Callanan this year by making him the free taker again. Jason Ford was the free taker last year. Callanan came back after injury and he didn't go straight on the frees again. Ford continued to take them. So he's made Callanan captain and he's made him free taker again. Now he was erratic with a couple of frees that would be pretty routine for him.
Was an awful night, I would say that.
It was an awful night for sure. We saw Jason Ford last year, another awful night, league semi-final against Limerick, took a penalty and absolutely blitzed it in the corner. Who do you think should be taking the frees for Tipperary, and do you think that Liam Sheedy is basically telling Callanan, I trust you, you're the man, lead us to glory?
I'd probably have Callanan on the frees. I think you get him in, you get his eye in during the game, you keep him as involved as you possibly can. Like, I thought it was interesting against the Clare game as well. He seemed to have a brief that was far more than just being a finisher. He actually came out the field quite a bit during it as well. So I think Sheedy's obviously empowered him quite a bit this year to be their key man in that forward line. It hasn't always clicked for Tipperary in the forwards, considering the amount of talent that they have. Yeah. You talk about Dublin's back six. Like, if Tipperary have their best 6 forwards on the pitches, there are better 6 forwards around in the country than Tipperary if they're all firing. And you probably want Seamus Callanan to be the main man of that. Like, Ford's a fine free taker, they're blessed that they have 2, but I would try and get Callanan as involved as possible.
If you're asking me who's the better free taker, I think Jason Ford is a better free taker. Who is it more important to have hitting frees? Probably Callanan, because invariably his...
Your point, you're suggesting a mental weakness there then? But you're saying there's a knock-on effect from hitting frees, that the confidence has been shown in him there, that he needs that in the bank and that confidence in him to then therefore also deliver from play. That's what it sounds like.
I never mentioned a mental weakness. I just mean...
Well, like, it inferred it to me. Disabuse me if I'm wrong.
He's a scorer. Yeah. And invariably, if you look back through games when he was taking frees and games when he was not taking frees, I have a fair idea of the figures, but his scoring rate in games where he was hitting the frees from play is a lot higher than in games when he wasn't. He is a bit of a confidence player, to be fair.
Will Tip win in Wexford this weekend? They're coming up against, again, like, because Limerick gets so many numbers back, Tip kind of struggled with that at times and were struggling with it against Clare up until the red card, because Clare were starting to get on top. Wexford are going to have a lot of men around the middle area. Do you think Tip are going to struggle with that this weekend?
I think they'll have too much class, particularly up front. I know it sounds stupid, but I just think they will score an awful lot more than Wexford and have the potential to score an awful lot more than Wexford. Be it playing around the sweeper and hitting 24, 25 points or trying to get in around for goals. I'd say they'd probably beat them mostly with points, I'd say, at the weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, I would go along with that as well. I think I fancy Tipperary this weekend. It's one of the more interesting ones because obviously, as you say, the blueprint is probably there for Davy Fitzgerald, and Wexford are going to hurl that way anyway. It's not like they would have been adjusting their game for Tipperary, but I just get the feeling they'll pick off enough scores to edge out Wexford. I don't know about Wexford's. Obviously, they didn't score a huge amount even in beating Cork, and the pitch has something to do with that, of course, last week, but still at the same time, I think Tipperary just have a bit too much for them.
It's debate time, Will, so you're taking centre stage here. So
is this where we take out the prize for this week as well, do we?
We do take out the prize. What is the prize? I obviously beat Verney last week.
Yeah.
Far more convincing argument.
So very specially, we've got a belt for this week.
We do, of course. Verney, tell us about this belt. Where did you get it?
I really don't want to lose this week because I'm literally just after purchasing this over in WrestleMania over in the St Stephen's Green Shopping Centre. It's got signatures of about 15 of the most high-profile intercontinental champions of all time, and I parted with a reasonable sum of cash.
How much?
I will not tell you.
Because you're embarrassed?
No, I'm not embarrassed.
You don't want to be burgled?
That could be possibly it. I'm not going to give out my postcode or my air code or my address or anything in Paris. But I think this is as nice as you get now when it comes to wrestling.
Who was your favourite intercontinental champ?
The Chico, Reza Ramon.
Reza Ramon, but what did he have? The
two-pick, yeah.
Two-pick, yeah. I thought Bret the Hitman Hart was decent.
He was brilliant. Mr. Perfect
as well, yeah.
Quality.
Kurt Hennig, was that his real name?
Yeah, Kurt Hennig, yeah. Actually, I have the first ever intercontinental champion on it, Pat Patterson. He won it in a mythical tournament in Rio de Janeiro. It never happened, but he won it in a mythical tournament. Yeah.
You are pretty much all the 80s and 90s champions.
Yeah, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat's on it as well, yeah.
Is he Superfly Jimmy Snuka? Did he win it at any stage?
I don't think he had it.
Don't think he won the intercontinental.
No.
All right, Will, come on, take it away.
Right, okay, so the debate this week, Saint versus Verney, is going to be about the sweeper system. That's why we've got the Waterford jersey in the background behind us as well.
Okay.
We decided beforehand, we had a coin toss to decide who was going to pick their side. And
we had no coin, and we ended up tossing
his laser card, I think, to try and decide. Michael Verney won the toss, so ultimately he got to decide which side he wanted to pick on this one. And the debate this week is, should Waterford retain or drop the sweeper? So Michael Verney, we're going to get 60 seconds up on the clock. First of all, you need to tell us why you think they should retain the sweeper, because your argument is they weren't going to keep the sweeper.
Are we on the clock?
I think we're on the clock.
Just started.
Here we go.
Okay, perfect. I think when you've played a system like they've played it 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, so they've played a system for 5 years. I think it would be a massive culture shock for that group of players who were all introduced to county hurling during Derek McGrath's reign if they were to go and play a different style. I just think, maybe not next year, but I think this year they will be more comfortable playing that style. I think it plays to the strengths that they have. They have no, we'll say, outstanding forwards that are going to do an unbelievable amount of damage on the scoreboard. So this kind of helps their style. They'll play it around the field, they'll put up a big tally of points. I also would have question marks about Tyg de Burka has rarely marked a man at county level. I think he plays the sweeper role really, really well. And I just think everyone talks about systems and styles of play to suit teams. The sweeper suits Waterford.
He's done that even with about 8 seconds to go. He must have some other points or something you want to say about him in the 8 seconds.
He just ran out of juice because he knows he's had nothing with this argument.
You're happy enough, you're just going to declare. Alright, so Michael Verney making the argument no, that Waterford shouldn't be dropping the sweeper. Shane Stapleton, you're going to make the argument that Fanning and the team should be making the decision this year then to hurl in a different style. Derek McGrath's gone, new style. We'll get 60 seconds on the clock. Convince me.
Like, the thing is, does Pádraig Fanning want to come in and be known as someone who's just trying to evolve slightly Derek McGrath's style? Is he going to tell his players again, we don't trust our forwards or backs enough to go out there and win the match 15 on 15 or close to it? Because we all know that hurling isn't strictly the traditional formation anymore. Anyone can play the sweeper. Tyg de Burka is brilliant at it. Dara Fives went in the All-Ireland semi-final 2017 and showed it can be just done just as well. Now, you look at all those forwards that came through for Waterford when they were winning All-Ireland minors and under-21s, and you ask, has the likes of Patrick Kern, has the likes of Shane Bennett, Stephen Bennett, Jake Dillon, all these players, have they they come in and developed as inter-county senior players? No, they haven't, because every day they're going out and playing 6-on-5. They're just chasing shadows all day, and they've no chance to actually show how good a hurlers they are, and they actually are excellent forwards. So imagine you put in Maurice Shanahan there, where he doesn't have to cover 80 yards of space constantly and say, we're going to hit good ball into you and you're going to get 2-5 for us today. Pádraig Mahony's a brilliant forward. Austin Gleeson, they have loads of, get rid of it.
Right, go on. You both made your point. Obviously, the belt is on the line, right? I'm going to put, how does about one of your points to each other, and then I can pick the winner pretty easily. So the first point that he's made is that anyone can play the sweeper.
That's
a limited system, anyone can do it.
That's a horrible argument. They have about maybe 2 players that can play the sweeper. I would say Dara Fives and Tyg de Bourke can play
Austin Gleeson would be alright at it.
Can play the system very, very.
Austin Gleeson, no?
Has he ever played? Has he really played properly in that?
Do you think he could do it? Like, he's a drop back centre back for a couple of years with the under 21s.
I'm not talking about can he do it. I'm talking about has he done it. They obviously maybe don't trust him in that role. I don't think anyone can play the sweeper, and I think it suits their players perfectly. Does Pádraig Fanning care if Derek McGrath's system is the one that wins in All-Ireland? I highly doubt it. He's the man in charge. I highly doubt it.
Right, his key point back to you then is that they've played this system, they've been very close to making the breakthrough using the system, the players are indoctrinated in it, and it's the best thing to use.
Well, the problem is they're not scoring enough up front. They're not the sort of team that score 25 like a Tipperary or a Kilkenny, and if they want to kick on to the next level, they've got to give their forwards a better opportunity, which is to not be outnumbered constantly and trust the team to actually go out and score more than the opposition.
Right. It's my pick on this one. Everyone's probably going to disagree on social media about this.
Give me that belt.
I reckon we've got a new champion this
And
time.
the winner!
I'm not entirely convinced that Waterford need to ditch things.
And the new!
It's nonsense.
And for the sake of the fact that he spent about $2,000 on this belt, we have to let him keep it.
This is a joke, and I'm happy to boot you out now at this stage because of that, which is perfect timing because you had to go and read the news elsewhere. Yeah. So we've got a video with Niall Burke and Grode McInerney. They spoke to Oisín Langan after Oranmore Marie's win over Munster champions Charleville to become the first ever All-Ireland intermediate champions.
It's very special. All the lads you grow up with and your families are there, everyone from around your parish, and it's just that extra buzz and there's that extra bond there with your club players, and it's something that'll live long in the memory.
Garrod, I imagine it means a lot and would have meant a lot regardless of how you won, but the fact that you won the way you did, coming from a bit of a deficit at half time, that makes it even more special.
Yeah, it is very special, I suppose, to just never give up attitude and everyone kind of dig in, and you know, it's kind of hard to believe. Like, Charleville are a very good team and they proved that today, and I suppose any other day you wouldn't know which way it could have went, but we're happy enough with the performances, and the work rate was absolutely fantastic today.
In the second half you hoovered up a lot of ball. Did you kind of have a word with yourself at half time, or did it just break your way in the second half? How did it work?
Look, I suppose there's a bit of both. Like, I suppose they were picking up a lot of loose ball around the middle, and running it, so there's not too much ball going down the way. They were using it very well, and I suppose when we kind of tightened up, there was a bit more ball coming down them valleys, so kind of gave it a bit easier to get on ball or whatnot. But the lads' work rate from out the field, that's what really made the difference.
And Niall, your scoring was immense today. I don't have the exact figure, but did you kind of put pressure on yourself before this game to do that, because obviously you're a man who's got a lot of experience of Croke Park?
Not really. I feel we've a very good bunch of forwards. Obviously, taking the frees, you're always going to get a few more scores where other lads will win it, but it just happened today. A few balls broke my way. It didn't really matter as long as we won the match.
Okay, we've relocated to the tactics board this week. We brought it out here where we can really get stuck into it and spread our shoulders. Michael, the big game this weekend is Kilkenny and Limerick. How do you see this game faring out? Like, I would suggest that these days in hurling, teams that are tactically involved, like Kilkenny and like Limerick, they like to isolate a couple of guys inside. Even Cork, I've seen them a couple of weeks ago, they have guys in a triangle formation out here, whatever way you want to do it. And then it's the middle eight is just swamped after that. I see it in Gaelic football, they talk about blanket defences. I think it's now blanket midfields in hurling, and it's Kilkenny are more or less going to mirror that as well. And it's all about who wins most ball in the middle eight. Yeah,
I wouldn't disagree with that. It's basically who wins most ball in here and who can get the ball into their attack as quickly as possible. It's an absolute war zone here in the middle. And whoever can, if you can break even in there, you have a great chance of winning. Just in last year's game, we'll just say this is the Kilkenny defence, shall we say? This is very similar to how it was. There was an awful lot of space, and they will not want that to happen again. Basically, the wing backs, Killian Buckley was taken on a tour of the field here by Kyle Hayes over and back here. They're going to try and park someone here.
But it's the same as the 2016 All-Ireland, and Joey Holden was left absolutely to the wolves in that game as well. We actually have an image here where we can look at how Limerick set up, and you can see they've just got so many players in their own half of the field, and this is what I'm talking about when I say the Limerick blanket midfield. Look at the amount of yellow dots just marking out all the Limerick players in their own half, and that was against Wexford in the first league game this year. And we have another image here as well, which shows how Limerick like to leave huge oceans of space in the attacking half of the field. That's against Tipperary, and I mean, Tipperary competed really well in terms of tackle rate, intensity, all that, but at times just the space killed them at the back, because I don't care how fast you are as a back, if the other opposition has time to look up and pin a ball into the corners, you're just in serious trouble as a back, no matter how fast you are.
Yeah, and it's not even, a lot of the time, they don't even, like Kyle Hayes might take a tiny little glance, but he knows, and Galan knows, and Graham Mulcahy knows, and they have a march in the defender. And it's very, very difficult, no matter who you are. Like Ollie Canning, any of the best cornerbacks would struggle when that sort of ball is coming in. Last year, I don't know whether Flanagan will be playing Sunday, but last year, he kind of took Pádraig Walsh out around here.
He did the same with James Barry as well.
Yeah, and he tried to do the same with Dottie Burke at different times as well. So by doing that, that created a lot of goal chances and a lot of space for Galan as well. They had identified Pádraig Walsh probably as Kilkenny's best maybe defender in the full back line. Or obviously you want to try and get him out of there. So it'd be interesting to see like Hugh Lawler and like Paddy Deegan is probably raw enough at centre back. Like
what do you mean
cornerback. Like cornerback is not too bad. You're playing a certain position, you're playing a corner, you're playing an area here.
And that's your job.
Centre back, like that's why I think someone like Sean Moran does it so well. It's between marking your man, protecting your defender, protecting your halfbacks, protecting your cornerbacks. It's a very, very difficult role. That's why like good centre backs are like, they're not easy come by, because it's such a tough role. Do I follow my man out here or do I not? Very, very tough. And I think on the flip side then, we'd say Declan Hannon is here. Richie Hogan last year tried to drag him out and got a lot of success by bringing him away from the goals. I think that's the type of player Kilkenny will put in on Hannon again, is someone mobile and small that's going to move him around. Now, it might necessarily be Richie Hogan, it could be Martin Keown maybe or someone like that, but that's kind of, that creates a lot of difficulties for here. You want to take the centre back, that's why it's so hard to play there. Take the centre back and make him feel uncomfortable, bring him to areas of the field that he doesn't want to go to.
So you've spent most of your career as a cornerback, I'd say, somewhere in the back. You kind of brought up the idea of touch-tight defending. What do you mean by that in the context of that role?
Well, man marking in hurling now and in football is a bit of a rarity. There's not that many designated man markers. I would say maybe Noel Connors, Conor Gleeson, Waterford, maybe Sean Finn, Limerick. Do Kilkenny have a designated man marker? Maybe
I would
Paul
say
Murphy.
Paul Murphy.
Maybe
yeah.
Paul Murphy. Jackie would have been the one as well. Do Galway have one? Not so sure. Not so sure if
they definitely have options.
They have options, yeah, but one guy, yeah. Because so like, just say Sean Finn was on Conor Whelan last year's All-Ireland final, and it didn't matter where Wheelo went. He was following him around, and that's fine. And it's almost like a tactic that Bill Belichick uses in the NFL. They place a lot of emphasis on their best forward, and if you can beat me with someone else,
fair enough,
grand, no problem. But this is such a thankless job. Like, I've no problem doing it, and I've done it for long enough. Well, I try to do it at least anyway. So you just basically, you're tracking him the whole time. A lot of the time you're ignoring the ball. You're just tracking runs. You're getting to your man. I was actually chatting to someone about it the other day. When you're like 10 yards off your man, we'll say, and the ball is down the far end of the field, the hardest run to make is that 10 yards sometimes, because you're so tired. But what they always say is, you get to him and then you relax. And when you're man marking, you're literally following him everywhere. Now, it creates isolations for other guys, but there has to be a thing where you trust the majority of the other lads. They're not marking lads that are as good as him.
It's usually on a key man, and if you stop
usually,
him, you would imagine the other forwards are less talented.
Yeah.
I remember being, I'd say it was under 12 or under 14, and my uncle-in-law, he was manager of the parish league team, and he says to me, because I was going to be cornerback, I want you stuck to him like shit on a blanket, which was an interesting way to put it. There are certain guys that I don't think you'd go touch tight on. So, for example, let's say just from the Dublin Championship, Danny Sutcliffe is obviously an excellent player. Alan McCrabb's been an excellent player for many years as well. And I would find that being touch tight, so right beside him the whole time, annoying him, getting in his face, that works really well with some players. In other players, you might have to actually, because maybe they're not searing pace, and obviously I'm not talking about Sutcliffe there because he's very, very fast, that some players, they just like to float and just juke around the place and do a little sidestep and get away from you, and then they've got a yard to shoot. So some players, I find that you always just give them a yard or two, always try and stay goal side, and if they don't have the pace to beat you, then you can actually kind of just hold them out and limit them.
Yeah, I've never adopted that approach, I'll be honest with you.
Well, that's generally when you're out wing back.
Yeah, it's different when you're out the pitch. A lot of the time with the best forwards, your main objective is just stop him getting the ball in his hand and just spoil him, basically. Spoil the ball, kick it, flick it 20 yards out of your way. And just on the touch tight thing as well, if this is a defender here and this is the forward here, the defender, like that's not touch tight because you're showing him the inside. So just to there, make sure that you're covering off the full back here, you're covering off a bit centre here, and if he does get the ball, he hasn't got an open route to goal basically as well. But it is a dying art, and I don't think that many coaches or managers are placing an unbelievable amount of emphasis on it. But I will say that nobody wants to do it as well. Everyone wants to puck ball. I'll give you a classic example. I couldn't get on the Offaly team one of the years, I can't remember, well there was a couple of years I couldn't get on it. But I couldn't get on it this year because manager said I wasn't hitting enough ball.
Even though you were a man marker?
Yeah. And
counterproductive.
So that was grand. The guy that was in cornerback was hitting a good bit of ball, but his man was getting maybe 3 points a game. So like it's a specific thing for managers. You have to appreciate what a certain maybe fella can do for you as well. There's certain lads can hit ball. I'd say if he can hit ball, I'd put him out here.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Cornerbacks don't necessarily. I remember one of the best games I ever played for Offaly, I didn't get the ball in my hand in the whole game.
Well, see, that's the thing. A lot of time, a man marker is a guy that, right, we don't want to have our hurler man marking because then that negates his abilities. We want to get someone who's a jobber, you being Case.
Jobber, lovely.
No, I'd be considered a jobber as well, so I would have over the years, and again, that's just at club level, be given the same job. If you saw the Tipperary against Clare league game this year, Adam Flynn was actually put out as a man marker on Tony Kelly, who was playing anywhere he wanted between half forward line and half back line. He often even likes to sweep up here. He just followed him absolutely everywhere.
That's fair enough though, yeah.
Liam Sheedy has obviously identified him as that kind of guy.
And Alan Flynn's a real athlete that could do that, you know what I mean?
He's got pace. And then Colin Galvin came on at the start of the second half. He was kind of playing around that area, base of midfield, playing in that direction. And as soon as Tony Kelly got sent off, where was Alan Flynn sent? Only over there, stopped their main man. So that just shows you the value of a man marker. And like you said, it might be a bit of a dying art, but I think the likes of Mattie Kenny is definitely going to utilise it this year.
It's hard, like
Sheedy's going to do it.
Yeah, you're nailing down a couple of their best players. You're giving yourself a really good chance if you can kind of nullify their best players. And I know a lot of people said about Keegan on Connolly in the football final. Keegan's such a good footballer. He's one of the rarities. He's such a good footballer. He has it all, and he can man mark.
But he scored a point from full back on Sean Kavanagh in the 2016 semi-final or quarter-final, whichever it was, and then he goes forward and scores a goal against Dermot Connolly as well.
But he's a dying art now, someone that can actually do it all and that has no problem in sacrificing his game for the greater good. That's a rarity.
Let's talk about the All-Ireland Club semi-finals, because Ballyhale beat Ballygunner 115-13, while St Thomas's beat Cushendall 18 points to 211. I actually just started up. There was an image that TJ Reid Health and Fitness put up on Instagram in the last day or so, and we'll just sit down as we're looking at this, and you can see there it's the very best of luck to Ballyhale Shamrocks in the All-Ireland Club Hurling semi-final, #hurling, #semi-final at official GAA, #made of more. The most interesting thing about this tweet, and this Instagram post is, and I'm not sure if TJ put it up himself, is that this thing saying best of luck to Ballyhale, it's actually a picture of O'Loughlin Gales.
Yeah, Jesus, there's 5 or 6 eggs on faces there now.
Yeah, it's a bit of a gaffe. But to be fair, I'm not going to completely hammer TJ, because I had a bit of a misstep myself on Twitter the other day. I saw an image up of the field in Thurles being groomed by Pa Burke. If it comes up on screen here, God, I'm such an idiot. But Tip GA put up a member of Semple Stadium staff getting the pitch lined out ahead of this weekend's action on the Field of Legends. That is Pa Burke. So I put in a tweet, Pa Burke is risky with the lawnmower as he is with 35 inches of ash, because he still is unbelievably risky. But of course, Declan Bogue, journalist, disabused me. Shane, you think this is a lawnmower? I thought the whole marketing effort behind you was that you were an earthy country type and not as painfully obvious a townie, because he's actually lining the field with a paint machine instead. So
fairness to Bogie, he got you good there.
He did, he nailed me, and rightly so. He took his chance. He's probably been waiting in the long grass for a long time. Of course.
Just on the club matches at the weekend, I was up in Parnell Saturday for Cushendall and Thomas's, and I tell you what, like the Antrim hurling community, the noise they brought, it was phenomenal. That second half was as exciting as the second half of club hurling in particular as we've been at in a long, long time. And leave it to as we were talking about cornerbacks, maybe not being able to do certain things. David Sherry popped up, had been playing sweeper, but they said they needed something different in attack. Kevin Lally said it, the manager, and he went up and he put over a serious point. Like that's, it's very rarely that the cornerback is the hero. So it was brilliant from him.
As well, I'd say for Cushendall, who'd played in a Piercing in the All-Ireland final in 2016, and they got absolutely annihilated that day. I'd say it was huge for them to put in a performance, which it wasn't just for their parish and to show that, you know, to also show that Antrim hurling, it's not as bad as people might suggest, because, you know, they're obviously not up at the upper echelons. There used to be a time when they were guaranteed an All-Ireland semi-final, more or less, but they've kind of fallen off the radar a little bit. So it was just a reminder that hurling is strong up there. Yeah, and they had a chance to draw it at the end, and the wing forward went for a goal, and I think the ball was actually going wide, but Cottle Burke stopped it. But they got a goal in the second half. It was I think it was Fergus McCambridge, and it was a beautiful reverse kind of no-look hand pass that set up the goal. It was lovely. It was a brilliant game of hurling. Yeah, I still think that club games should be played in the calendar year, but that was a good game. And in fairness to Ballyhale outscored Ballygunner 112 to 3 points from play. It's hard. It's very hard to argue with that, really. Unfortunately for Ballygunner, they just couldn't, and they didn't have a scoring threat up front too often during the game. 13 points. There was that goal chance where the mud probably held the ball up. Yeah. They had to get that at that stage. Well, what's the story there? Like the Theatre of Dreams, mud in the goals of the Theatre of Dreams on the good field. Seriously wrong. I don't know what happened, but oh, he can't. Nothing to say. That's a word. That's a record anyway. Nothing to say. You had me. We're a few weeks out from the game just yet, but Ballyhale against St Thomas's. Who would you back there? Both recent All-Ireland winners. Yeah, Ballyhale would probably be. I'd say they'd probably be 1 to 3 favourites to be heavy favourites, because they seem to have this knack where they have a different forward that can pop up every day, like the Kilkenny team almost. Like, and Owen Cody hit 12 points for St Kieran's yesterday in the Leinster semi-final to win as well. They comprehensively won the Dublin teams, and it was Adrian Mullen in the Leinster final. It'll be TJ another day. It was Colin Fennelly against Conor McDonald's club in the Leinster semi-final. So like, they've got serious firepower. Thomas is in the first half against Cushendall were very, very slick. I have to say, very, very slick. And they won that game despite the fact that Conor Cooney was anonymous. David Burke was very, very quiet. Aina Burke never poked the ball in the second half. Well, it's just actually something I'm just thinking of there now. You've probably seen him. You probably saw him against Tip in the All-Ireland under-21 semi-final. But Fintan Burke, I know this is a bit of an outrageous thing to say, he looks like the second coming of Paddy Maher. Genuinely, he's an absolute bull. Same style, left hand, outrageously strong for his age. Pucks an outrageous amount of ball. The reason Cushendall got back into the game is they just kept the ball away from him in the second half. Do you see him getting on the Galway team this year? Because I was thinking Sean Loftus, based on what we saw last year, is most likely to get in there. And instead of who as well? Fintan Burke is quite raw, I will say that. But give him a couple of years and he could be a mainstay of that team. He's a powerhouse. Yeah. So you're not thinking 2019 and the team, and also he's obviously missing league games as well by being involved. I wouldn't think 2019. No, I'd imagine Loftus has a good chance, and even Tom Monaghan has a good chance of breaking through. But it'd be interesting to see whether, we haven't talked too much about Galway. It'd be interesting to see how much they change things around. Will they get new faces in? Gerard McInerney and Niall Burke have obviously missed a bit of the league as well. Like, will they try some new faces in different places? It'd be interesting to see. Jack Fitzpatrick is another guy who's looking good this year as well. Haven't heard much about him. He's in with NUIG, and a couple of different guys have told me he's been performing well, looking good. We have comments in there on the GAA transfers. Someone called On The Bank on Twitter. Dublin club transfers are toxic. Needs a draft system. Donny Vaughan then in Mayo as well, who transferred from Ballinrobe to Castlebar, if I remember correctly. And Noel Healy, actually, the current footballer of the year, to Mourneabbey, 2017 footballer of the year, women's footballer of the year, which is just bizarre. Going to the club All-Ireland champions, Mourneabbey. Yeah, Saul Tiller always added in Galway. Inter-county, look at Donegal poaching Paul Brennan from Leitrim. Shawnee Johnson to Kildare, of course. And, good hurler. And On The Bank also saying it's all against the GAA ethos, which I suppose is a matter of opinion, and of course it depends on the case as well, of course. I think we've it all said, Michael, have we? Yeah, I think we have, it should be a good weekend ahead, in fairness. Yeah, should be. Right, that's it for the Hurling Show this week. The Gaelic Football Show is every Wednesday from 12:30 with myself, and the Hurling Show every Thursday from 3 p.m. We'll see you next week on Off The Ball.